Welcome to the Boardroom Sessions podcast. In these sessions, we meet the most amazing and interesting people. We learn about their passions, their business models, cool new technologies, and of course, their lessons on personal growth. I hope you enjoy. On this Boardroom Sessions podcast, we go on the job site with Revere Real Estate. We meet Nick.lind, owner and president of Revere Real Estate. We go onto the job site here where we have a two-house real estate development underway. You're going to hear hammers and compressors in the background. We also get to meet Nick Costa, the social media arm of Revere Media, who's working on the media piece here. We learn about the real estate investment for residential real estate, this model in particular, and how these guys got started. Very fascinating stuff, and what a return on investment this is sure to be. Hope you enjoy. All right, we have a special treat for you here today as we are on site in a spec home right now in the middle of one of two houses being built here in downtown Huntington Beach. I'm here with Nick.lind of Revere Real Estate.
Hello.
Hey, Nick.
Hi.
And I'm here with Nick Costa, also the social media guy here that makes the social media engine go for this company here, Nick Costa.
Yes, sir.
How are you, Nick?
Fantastic.
Good.
Yeah.
Hey, so bear with us as we have some more than abundant noise in the background, but we are on a job site like I described, and going to talk today a little bit about spec real estate. So I think everybody knows, has in their viewpoint, have seen a house in their neighborhood get demolished and a brand new, bigger, better, more beautiful house go up and help everyone's current real estate value in their neighborhood. That's exactly what's going on here today. And Nick, tell us a little bit about this development that we're on here today.
Yeah.
It's a two-lot development?
Yes. So I'll tell you a little bit about, sort of the general overview of the project here. But first of all, again, hey, thank you very, very much for having me on the podcast. It's a true honor and a privilege to be here. And I know Nick and I have been spending a lot of time talking about how appreciative and grateful we are to be here. So yes, just again, a quick introduction. My name is Nick.lind. I'm the owner operator of Revere Real Estate Development Company. And I got my partner here, Nick, who runs our Revere Media arm. So I just want to your question, we are on a two-lot deal here in downtown Huntington Beach. So in the local area here in downtown, there's the state streets that are just behind Pacific City. If you're not familiar with Pacific City, it's a beautiful commercial development downtown with shops and restaurants and places to hang out, and it's right next to the pier. So these are the state streets. We're on Huntington Street. We're at Huntington in Indianapolis. Like you said, it's a neighborhood, old neighborhood. We were able to buy a double lot. It was a single structure, very, very small, 100-year-old bungalow. Beautiful, actually. Mike, you would have loved to see it. Yeah. But out with the old, in with the new. What we did is we went through entitlements and went through the permitting process, tore the house down, and now we're building in its place because it's a double lot. We sublotted it, did an address assignment, created a second address, and then now we're building two 3,500 square foot single family residences.
Awesome. So as a Huntington Beach resident, I got to tell you, I'm very happy, right? I own property and real estate in Huntington Beach, and you're helping our value. So I like that. Before I dive into some of the more obvious questions that my friends are going to want to ask here about this development in particular, I'm going to ask a little bit about you. So Nick, tell us a little bit how you got into this business and what's your background. You grew up, I know that you live in Newport Beach and that you surf. And so where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I grew up in a little town called Mission Viejo. I'm actually extremely fond of it. It's in southern Orange County, about 15 minutes south of Irvine. My background, so I did my undergraduate at UC Davis. I actually was a soccer player for the team and came back when I was finished with a economics degree and statistics degree. I went into finance, had a big background in mathematics, and went into finance, evolved into a financial planner, where originally I was essentially, soliciting for a financial institution, insurance and investment products. Eventually,
you were out selling.
I was. And eventually, I realized pretty early on that wasn't as enjoyable of a process. But what was more enjoyable was to get the additional licenses to become a fiduciary, where I actually had active management of clients' investment accounts. So the point I'm trying to make is my background is in finance, and it did lead me directly into real estate in the following ways. I'd sit down with a husband and wife. Most of my clients, 250 or so, were 90% between the ages of 45 and 65. And essentially what I had done over the past 10 years that I was employed with a large financial institution was essentially sit down at the kitchen table and say, what are your goals? What are your dreams? What are your aspirations from a financial aspect? They would tell me, they told me they enjoyed the stock market. They enjoyed saving for their future, for their retirement. But they also said, being that most of my clients are in Orange County, they also said that they were extremely privileged to feel the benefits of their own home, most of whom had their homes for 20, 30 years grow.
When you start to look at the portfolios of all those folks, right, their real estate's been appreciating better than the market, for sure, without a doubt. And so they're saying, give me more of that. Is what they're saying?
Yeah, well, they're saying, they're living in East Side Costa Mesa, for example. A client, that I'm thinking of in particular, living in East Side Costa Mesa, purchased the home in the 60s or 70s, for $150,000, $200,000, and now we're sitting at over $1 million home.
Sure.
So that goes into the fundamentals of a financial plan. Is obviously their primary residence, whether there's still a loan out on it.
Big return on that investment, right?
Oh,
and
absolutely.
So then they're looking at, how do I do that when the market's up and down and people are taking their little piece by piece by piece. If anybody's read the Tony Robbins book that's out, you'll know that adds up over time to a less of an investment, right? A lesser return on your investment than real estate. So you started hearing that real estate was a hot, people were doing well with their own personal houses, and
it was. So kind of back to that question of my background is from financial planning. I did have these conversations over the last 10 years or so, and they specifically made mention to how thankful they were that their real estate prices had continued to accrue and accumulate, and that it was a huge deal for them. I said, hey, would you like to invest in some real estate? So what happened was toward the middle part of last year, well, let me back up a second. I actually, on a personal accord, I purchased my first home at age 25 in Lake Forest. It was a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,700 square foot. I think I got it for $425. I had I did an FHA loan. Actually, I'll take a moment, just make mention, shout out to Andy Dane Carter. He talks ad nauseum about the significance of putting as little down as possible, especially if you're looking for some real estate and you have a difficult time getting into the marketplace because we're so high on the prices here in Southern California. But I'd go check him out if I were you.
And who's that?
Andy Dane Carter.
Okay.
He's also the author of 100 Doors. So, we've done a couple of shoots out
That's
here
the
on
book
the.
we're looking at right
Absolutely.
there. I see it. Okay.
Yeah. I keep it close to my heart. But in any event,
Is Andy a mentor of yours?
Yeah, he's a mentor of, he's actually working hand in hand even more so with a media partner of mine, Nick Costa, and they've been doing a lot of back and forth on, the whole, media, advertising, everything around everything that social media is.
Okay.
I'm not any good with that.
I'll leave a link for that, and we'll have more on Nick Kosta here in a second.
Absolutely, and Nick Costa, you can find him at Smells Fantastic, exactly as it sounds. He is quite a character. He's one of those guys where you don't know if he's like. He's thinking of 17 things at one time, and he's just an absolute brainiac.
I got
but down to earth as well.
Nickisms for you too. Remind me to tell you about his voicemail in a second.
Yeah. But so to your audience, I know from your question, the background, and then the clients, kind of getting back on that, we found value. I'll try to make a long story shorter. We found value in looking at real estate deals. I personally, like I said, I had my own primary residence. I bought it. It was extremely dilapidated. I did a lot of gentrification. or home improvements, you might put it, flipping, if you will. I lived in it for 4 years, and I basically had a tool belt around my waist, and I fixed the entire house up myself, and then sold it at a 30% markup 4 years later. That was my first taste in real estate, so I brought that perspective to these clients that were saying, hey, my home's increased in value substantially. How do I get involved more? And so what I did was last year created Revere Real Estate and created a real estate investment syndication, which was, a cumulative teamwork effort of me as well as a few investors. And that's how we got into this project, Mike, that we're sitting on today.
So you were originally talking with and consulting with folks about their financial plans, right?
Yep.
Financial planning.
Yes.
And then everyone agreed that real estate, residential real estate in particular, was a vehicle that was good for them. You had experience doing it yourself, right? And so therefore you formed a company to do just that, to get into real estate investment.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I did. We got together, we got this project started. I created an S corporation. I also created an LLC in the name of the property. And, Mike, to whatever's, I'm an open book. So, for those of you who are listening and, are in real estate yourselves, or if you're investors, or if you're curious about how this all works behind the curtains, I'm happy to share anything and everything you think would be valuable to them.
I'm super grateful for that, first of all, and that's why we're sitting here today. I'm a fledgling new investor. Okay, I've got a couple of real estate pieces of property that we are renting in residential, and I'm investing now in another market, and we talked a little bit about that. So I'm curious, and I know the podcast listeners are curious as to how to make money on any kind of business venture, and so very interested to learn more about this here. So tell me about these two properties here. So there were originally houses here. You went through the process of buying those properties, demolishing those. There's permitting involved. Did the city get? Do you ever have challenges with, say, the city of Huntington Beach, because some of these are older houses and they don't want everything flipped to the new?
Yeah. So there was one structure here. There was a second structure, a garage in the back. But what we did is we're sitting on this. It's a double lot. Back in like the 50s, somewhere around that time frame, don't quote me on it, but back somewhere around the 50s, the city of Huntington Beach decided to change their city ordinance. They changed the zoning to allow for any property that had a square footage on the state streets as, I think, 6,000 square feet or larger to be considered a double lot. The significance of that is they allowed for the additional zoning of 2 units on those lots, meaning that if you bought the lot, you could actually have 2 residences. So one of the primary reasons they had done it back in the day, and this is just through some of my historical references, is that they did it actually, Mike, because they wanted to offer the ability for people to build back houses for their parents. Okay. So that was kind of one of the primary thoughts. But then eventually developers came in like myself and realized that with some entitlements, you could actually chop the lot into 2. Now, the reason why that's so amazing through the lens of a developer is when you're buying one home, obviously you're buying on the value of that home. When you're building 2 homes in its replace, not to mention these homes are 4 times bigger each than the original structure, the math on the figures when you're selling 2 homes and you'd only bought 1 is sizable. It's really sizable. So these are 2. They're both just under 3,400 square feet. They're 3 stories tall. They each have a roofed or a outdoor deck on the 3rd story. We call them in the industry tall skinnies. Yeah. If you're in Huntington Beach or you visited Huntington Beach, you'll see them all along PCH.
Just about any beach town. Any beach town you go to up and down the coast, they do the same thing. Right?
Yeah.
But in Huntington, for sure. But I do know that there was some rage on some of these the cottages because they're somewhat historic, I guess, or they put a moniker of them being historic. They were built post World War II, I believe, for development here in Huntington Beach at the time. You go in a few blocks outside of downtown, it's not an issue. I mean, all over my neighborhood. I live blocks from here, and my neighborhood is older houses that were built in the 60s, in the early 60s, and we would welcome getting those knocked down, but they're not double lots that you could put two properties on. At any rate, so walk me through, this is a single lot that you bought. You're going to build two houses. You're in the middle of building two separate pieces of property here. Let's walk through the math, right? So without getting into specific numbers, you bought one house, you're gonna break it out into two, and you have a full construction project going on. How long does the construction project normally take?
So as soon as we buy the lot, we have, my team estimates anywhere from 4 to 6 months in entitlements. Entitlements, are essentially, in summary, is just getting the lot divided into two addresses, getting a new APN number or parcel number, going through the permits of the actual architecture, the structural engineer sign-offs, the observations showing that it's structurally sound, obviously the energy conservation, that it's insulated properly, the Title 24, the soil investigation reports. Another just quick aside is Huntington Beach actually used to have a lot of oil wells.
Yes.
So we had to go through some additional soil investigation to make sure that we didn't need a methane barrier, because there are wells in downtown Huntington Beach. If you're not familiar, it's actually an interesting background. I'd check it out if I were you. Some wells have to be capped if it's on the site. Others just require a methane barrier. Fortunately, we didn't have that. But back to your question, 4 to 6 months on the entitlements. Then you get the permits, you get the building permits. And then it takes us, Mike, around anywhere from 10 to 12 months once we're laying the foundation until finished product.
Okay. So let's talk about the investment, right? So you're not putting up the capital for most of these. I'm sure you're putting some capital into these, right? Which is a good investment on your behalf. But I'm certain the machine that makes this go around are individual investors or groups of investors.
Yes, they are, yeah.
So tell me about that. It doesn't sound to me like it's a full REIT and some controlled corporate information. It sounds like it's a bunch of individuals.
Yeah, it is. It is. Although I'm laughing because, obviously one of the dreams, and maybe we'll get to it later, is, hopefully you'll be talking to me in 30 years and I'll be establishing a REIT. But no, we're just we're just families. We're just local, good earnest families that got together and established this. The way that it looks logistically is that I do actually have, if you're building or you're desiring to build or to do what we're doing here, I would heavily encourage that you do your first couple projects with skin in the game. And what we mean by that is put some of your own money into it. If you're gonna pitch this to families, obviously the demographic doesn't have to be a family. It could be a small business, entrepreneurs, whomever. But this is just a few families. If you're gonna pitch it and you're gonna say, hey, you should invest this money into this deal, and we can get into a little bit more about how that looks. Obviously, they're doing it for a rate of return. I would encourage you to put some of your own money into the deal. So I put a bit of my own money into it. We call it skin in the game. It makes the investors feel like I actually have a vested interest, and I'm not just doing it to leverage the money. So what we did was I created an LLC in the name of the property, as I had briefly alluded to earlier. But that LLC is encompassed, actually has 4 families actually, in the deal. So I did the capital raise of what was needed to buy the project, lock in the lot, go through entitlements, the cost for the architects, and then secondarily, the second tranche of funds, or the second investment amount, is when we applied for the construction loan at month 4 to 6 when we started building a few months ago.
That's where you start soliciting investors to come in?
Yeah, so we solicited one investor at the very beginning to acquire the lot. So we did have to get a loan to acquire the lot, and then we solicited, but you're right though, Mike, we did do the primary round of investment capital raise when we got ready at month 4 or 5 with permits in hand, ready to do the construction. That's when the majority of the money was put together. syndication was established, the LLC in the name of the property, so that my investors on other projects, don't have any, liability issues or anything like that. It's just always smarter to have that, compartmentalization. So yeah, we got together, and then again, the fancy term of it is considered a real estate investment syndication. Just a nice way of saying, here what we've done at Revere is we put a few families together that had some funding, backed this project, and then when the projects sell, when both homes are sold, the proceeds above and beyond our cost basis or our cost of acquisition and construction, that profit spread will then be divvied up accordingly to those investors.
To the amount of investment that they put in, right?
That's correct.
And everything's out on the table. You have a full look at what's going on. I'm sure they have some say in what's happening during the building process and that kind of thing.
We give that opportunity to them, but the families that are in on this syndication are like, hey, listen, this is what you do. This is what you have a passion for. We can see it in your eyes. Yeah. Go do it.
Yeah.
We know you love this. We know you have a passion for real estate. Go make these things happen. Keep us posted on a monthly basis, which I do. We have, they just were over here a few weeks ago, walked them on site. Their eyes were gleaming. This is, by the way, both of these investors, all three of these investors actually, it's their first project. So walking them on site and having them feel like,
Very
the lumber
exciting.
was, partly funded by them is pretty cool to see.
That's very
So
cool.
they came out, but yeah, they come out, I talk to them once a month, and they come out every so often and see the process. But they basically said, Nick, run the show, keep us posted.
Yeah. So if this is successful, there's a big return, right? So the beauty of this model that we're looking at here today is the fact that the return's a lot bigger for your investors than, say, in one of the developments that you and I spoke about that I've been privy to. One of my out-of-state ones, which is turnkey, and there's an investment in the real estate, there's an investment in the build up front. It's all turnkey. I've got to have property managers and things like that run the rents and things of that nature. So it's long-term, but it's lower return. This is a initial investment. It's a year or so turnaround, and then there's a big hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting. So what would be next? I mean, are you opening up these type of properties in the near future here for folks like myself or our listeners here?
Yeah, so I actually, just this morning, I talked to one of my brokers. We're putting an offer in as we speak in Santa Monica. So I'm looking at a deal in Santa Monica. The numbers, it pencils well. I also just got off the phone this morning with another partner of mine who he and I are going to go in on a property in Redondo. So hopefully the Redondo property works as well. It's an offer. Unfortunately, there's a lot of other offers. So offers made in on Santa Monica, Redondo. I did put a few weeks ago another couple of offers on property in downtown Huntington Beach. Have yet to hear back from that. So, where we're going is we're just going to be continue to build. As long as people are buying, we're going to continue to build. As long as interest rates stay where they are. Interest rates about a couple of months ago were the lowest it's been in 2 years. I've also got wind that we may even see another small drop in interest rates. So if that keeps happening, I know a lot of people talk about, we're these people are emotionally attached to what the media has to say on the whole, and sometimes forget to evaluate the fundamentals.
Yeah,
but I think we're still good.
The real estate market has been proven over and over and over again to rebound quickly and rebound and move forward. In my lifetime, I haven't seen anything more than a dip. Than a dip in a period of time, and frankly, a dip was a time for somebody like you to be buying.
Absolutely.
And the last real estate dip that we had here was in Southern California in particular. All the rich guys I knew got significantly richer because they were out buying new property, and they were buying property at really good rates because the banks were foreclosing and pulling all those kind of shenanigans that were going on there. So let's talk a little bit about the media involved in raising funds, right? Because you're a fledgling new investment firm, right? You're going to be getting investors. Once the success happens in these properties here, you'll be looking for more folks like to write checks to put this forward and buy more properties and have them all over town. And then ultimately you're going to need to sell this property quickly and for the price you want to get. So I imagine that there's some marketing that needs to go on there. So Nick Costa, tell us a little bit about the Revere Media.
Yeah, so Revere Media, again, thanks Mike for coming out. It's so Revere Media is kind of an interesting concept. It's a dual play off of Nick's Revere brand, and what the main purpose is going to be is to cater directly to the area where these houses are. So we're going to be highlighting local businesses, we're going to be highlighting local trades, and then working with those trades and businesses to help promote their companies.
Interesting. So you're the actual trade. So you'll be talking about the contractors, you'll be talking about the vendors that are selling, the lumber companies, right? Local lumber companies, keeping it real and local, right?
Absolutely.
Interesting spin.
100%. So we have our general contractor, we introduced to a partner of ours, 100 Doors, Andy Dane Carter. He has a very large podcast and media company as well. He does a lot of local investing. And so Grant was on his podcast discussing some different points and things like that. So we're going to interview some different elevator companies. It's always fun to watch elevators, a bunch of video about elevators. People don't know what's the difference between a $15,000 elevator, a $30,000 elevator, and a $100,000 elevator. They're very different. And what's the difference between an elevator in your house and not having an elevator?
So we're having this 3-story house is going to have an elevator in it?
Yeah, right behind us is the elevator shaft. Yes.
Interesting. I guess that's important because there's a lot of folks who are getting older and they don't want to make it 3 flights of stairs up and down every time, right?
It's an important question. If you're a buyer and you don't need an elevator and you're paying for one, or are you somebody who does want an elevator, and then we're going to highlight that. So that's what the media arm does. It brings information to the local audience, to the buyer pool, and just to people in general. Yeah. It also connects trades like the elevator company to developers like Nick. And so it's an interesting dynamic. It's a win-win-win across all bases. We get to build relationships with all these different groups. And let's just be honest, it's cool to find out about elevators. I mean, I don't know a lot of the things that we're going to discover on this. We have yet to. So if you're an elevator company out there, we would love to talk to you. Let us know. But that's just one specific the roofers. You know, we can go talk to different people. What's the difference between a metal roof versus an asphalt roof in the Southern California market? And what are the cost differences? What are the lifespan differences? And so those are some of the things that the media arm can shed some light on, provide information to the brand of the trade, provide information to the developer, and then also I get to learn all of that through the process.
And so you're going to learn about the trade itself, what's going on in the house here. How are you finding the investors, right? Like, so the next step will be, once this is a successful venture, the next step is going to be finding more investors to write checks for this property. So you have the interest in the building of the property. So somebody who might be a fan of the shows that are on TV right now, all the flipping houses and redevelopment shows that my wife watches on A&E all the time and Bravo. Those shows are you're appealing to that crowd as well as the investor.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So a story I like to explain on that is the red balloon idea. And so Nick and I can often say, hey, there's a red balloon across the city there. Let's go chase and grab it. So he's sprinting one way, I'm running the other way across town. I'm on an electric bike, he's on his Tesla. Those are both examples. But we're chasing after this red balloon. He gets there first, he's got a red balloon. I meet up with him, and now we're looking at this red balloon. That's a really cool thing. The other idea is to have a team of people looking for red balloons. Now the final way, or the final concept that the media arm does, the media arm allows the red balloons to drift to us. And so by highlighting different people in the community, by showcasing and documenting the actual build, then the investors can go and they can watch us do this, and they can vet for themselves who we are and what we do, and then eventually they will come to us. Okay. And they can make their educated decisions. If we're personality fit, they can come and look at the different things that we do. And so we're not trying to just to sell people, we're trying to attract like-minded people.
I like it. That's a very different spin. It's a very grassroots spin. It's multi-dimensional in the way I see it in today's economy. There's a lot of press right now on, just look at the amount of TV shows that are on right now about this type of phases of development. So people are very curious into it, so you're appealing to that. then will you be involved in the actual selling or helping market the property to the end user? So when this is ready for sale, then you're going to go to market and try and find and bring appeal to the people that are in the neighborhood of buying a house?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And my initial response to you and the three of us sitting here right now is, of course we are, because that's why we have this media arm. Now, a lot of people don't have a media arm. A lot of developers and investment companies don't have that luxury, shall we say. So what we do is we can go out and we can work, just like you have a tile person who comes in and does all the tile on the house. That tile guy or that tile trade doesn't have a media company, but they can hire a media company.
Right.
They can create their own. And so we have real estate agents that we use, just like any sophisticated business model. They'll have a specific expert come in to execute on that task.
That has the contacts, that has the people, that has reputation for getting these brand new properties and the background and the stories, et cetera.
Absolutely.
Right?
So certain real estate companies, certain real estate agents, and certain real estate brokerages will have a decent amount, an okay amount, or maybe none at all, real estate media arm. Some of them are not doing a good job, and we can help them do a better job. So what we can do is we can step in and we can enhance the experience of that real estate agent who Nick chooses to list the house.
Okay.
So if the local expert is not doing a good job on their real estate, on their social media pages, if they don't know how to run an Instagram story ad to their target market, if they're not running good Facebook video ads, if they're not doing YouTube pre-roll ads, if they're not writing good content for their LinkedIn organic posts and feeds, if their eyes are glazing over when I just mentioned those 4 things, then they're already behind.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with what Nick said more. Let me just chime in for a minute on that. I think what's being illustrated just now, and the picture that was just painted was, and I say this with the utmost of respect for anybody out there in that side of the world in the realtor game, if you want it done right, do it yourself. What I mean by that more specifically is when Nick and I initially set off on these ventures, his insight, wherewithal, determination, and downright genius mindset when it comes to marketing, advertising, these properties will have such a pipeline and conduit to the buyer that the real estate agent will essentially just be doing the transaction. So in addition, when I have, like right now, for example, there's 2 homes that are currently in construction. One of them is already pre-sold. So one of them was already pre-sold at $2.1 million, which is a tie for the record down here on State Streets as we speak.
I'm just going to venture probably a little more than you paid for the double lot.
Absolutely. There is one across the street actually that's going for 2.3. The architecture and the steel that were used are out of this world. I'm not sure their spread is quite the same, but I will say this. One of them's already pre-sold. The other one will be coming to market soon. I have agents up the wazoo wanting to list it, get an exclusive listing. But the point I'm trying to make is that when I have non-exclusive listings, I have 4 or 5 or 6 different agents marketing it. They're not actually working necessarily that hard because they have a non-exclusive listing. Meaning, if somebody does the work, but a different agent sells the property, the initial person doing the work doesn't get paid. The point I'm making is that when I have, but it behooves the development and ultimately falls back on the investor. It benefits our entities to have as many people soliciting this, as many realtors as possible.
Sure.
Even if they only just briefly mention it to their buyer pool, it still has a major effect and major ripple. But the media side is going to be marketing it so much that all of these buyers who have been briefly told about it by their realtor will have said, oh, you know what? So-and-so told me about this, or so-and-so. So it's just another way to go into it.
It's a completely different paradigm today, right? There's no doubt about it. It's an app-driven world that we're living in, right? You know, sorry for my friends that are going to hear this that are in real estate, but it's becoming an app as well. And people are buying houses on the internet. They're with an app all day long, right? The car business is dead. I could have a whole nother conversation around that.
Carvana.
I bought a car on Car Gurus and had an experience that we can talk about another day on that changed everything, right? Got the exact cars I wanted. So this is very similar scenario, but the media angle is very intriguing because everything has to be brought to the forefront, right? Or it just looks like another property at another price, and not all things are created equal, and so therefore you have to get the word out. So very interested in hearing about that. So what's next? We're talking about app world, right? We're talking about investors. So this property goes off as planned. You're looking at a couple other additional properties here. This is an exciting scenario. I mean, as long as the real estate market is on fire right now, this is a model that will keep going. Do you ever see rentals in the play, or is it all about the sale?
That's a great question. And again, from a media arm, if you're interested in that, stay tuned for more information. Revere Real Estate in partnership with Revere Media. Take a look at Smells Fantastic and at Revere Real Estate on Instagram. We'll be sharing more information on the media side. To your question, what's next, right? The real estate market, as we all know, as we're all, prudent investors, prudent with our finances, we understand that what goes up must come down. Now, in the real estate, what I think that looks like is we will not have the growth level in the future as we do now. But what I will say, and you made mention to this, Mike, absolutely, in the long run, well, let me put it this way. If you open up your real estate textbook, page 1, paragraph 1 is going to say that real estate is a tangible asset and it is the number one hedge for inflation, meaning that as inflation is about 2 to 3% right now, real estate in the long term is the number one hedge against inflation, the number one hedge against your decreasing purchasing power. I mean, we can get even more detail on that. But what I will say is this, in the long run, to your question, I think what the play right now is the for sale space. It allows for the liquidity. It allows for the turnaround, new builds, bigger builds. And so what I think in the next few years, maybe in the next 2-3 years, is Revere's getting into, a few more spec deals, meaning a few more single family residences, maybe 2, 4 next to each other, what have you. But I think in the long run, one of the avenues that I see us, a direction that I see us going is definitely not all for sale. Definitely the majority in the long run are probably going to be buy holds, probably going to be somewhere around 7 to 10 year outlooks. Check out opportunity zones. If you don't already know that, take a look. I don't think it's a secret anymore.
Nope.
But Los Angeles opportunity zones, Orange County opportunity zones, where you build, I'm looking at multifamily, buy, hold, apartment complexes.
Yeah, the opportunity
something
zone
like that.
play is in play in many states across the U.S. right now. I have friends and I'm an investor in Utah. I have friends that are investors in Nashville, Texas, etc. Same play. And there's a construction element much like this. There's then the cash flow, right? Cash flow is the game there. So it's multi-tenants, multi-renters, keep the rentals up, cash flow positive right out of the gate. Then it's a long-term run on the cash flow.
And there's a lot of additional benefits that and I still see single family residences being a good percentage of the development company's business model. But I think it's going to be over the longer and longer we're in business, probably the lower and lower that percentage is. But essentially the multifamily allows for several different things. First of all, the ability to diversify your risk with multifamily is phenomenal because instead of having, door number 1 and door number 2, you have, 8 doors, 10 doors, 15 doors, and if one of those is not occupied, you have 14 out of 15 still occupied versus 0 out of 1 or 1 out of 2. And secondarily is in the multifamily, in the long run, you can do an accelerated depreciation schedule. You can do a cost segregation model to allow for additional tax benefits. So in buy and holds, the rent bodes some tax consequences. I wouldn't say consequences because that's kind of a negatively connotated expression, but I would say there's some tax ramifications. And when you do some multifamily at the scales that we're talking about, 20 units, 50 units, 100 units, you'll allow for some capital. We basically call it CapEx, which allows for improvements on the land, and we can accelerate the depreciation schedule, allow for additional savings on the cash flow. When you're looking at a cap rate on a multi-unit deal, it bodes well, especially when you're taking taxes into consideration.
So it spreads the risk, and it has some advantages along the tax lines. And there's it's a cash flow game. It's a different scenario. Some folks are looking for a quick turnaround on their investment. There could be a big investment here, big turnaround on this investment, or it could be a cash flow scenario. The other model, which is becoming popular now, is the crowdsourced REIT, right? Crowdsourced meaning that you don't have to have some institutional investors. You don't have to have some big hit investors. You have an application up and it's on. I think of Rich Uncles, for example, right? I'm an investor in Rich Uncles, and it's an app, based scenario. It's on the internet. You have little as $500 buy-in, and you get into that. You buy commercial real estate through this REIT. You don't buy it. The REIT buys it, and everything's done. All the thinking's done. All the turnaround's done. I just get a statement in the mail that it's about 7%. It's been performing quarter over quarter, compounding. I just keep rolling it back into that scenario. So it's less of a return, but it's easy, right? It's easy and it's diversified. So I imagine that for you to make something like this easy to the institutional investor, easy to the individual investor, would be a play that you could keep doing as long as you could scale, right?
Absolutely. I think from an institutional level, I think we're years and years away from that. I do think, however, that we're only a few years away from an accredited investor. So anybody with a couple of $1 million that they want to invest in real estate. So I think accredited investors will like that additional turnkey aspect where they get the statement in the mail. We have a custodian that's holding the accounts for us on behalf of the real estate company. Sending statements, sending things like that. I know we're looking into, and this is something Nick and I are discussing more, but we're looking at whether it's quarterly newsletters, quarterly financial snapshots, so that the investors know exactly what's going on and the expectation is clear right from the beginning. So I think that's more in the breadth of what we're discussing in the upcoming years as far as turnkey for them. I do know that crowdsourcing investment funds are, I think of something like Fundrise, which is just
Squirrel, Acorn.
Absolutely.
There's all kinds of these now.
Absolutely. I think
Stash.
I think though that where the value add in that lies is definitely, Mike, in the ability to feel like it's a easy, safe, as relatively, knowing it's a real estate venture as can possibly be. However, having seen a lot of those cap rates myself, having looked at a lot of that, it is typically on the lower side as far as your overall internal rate of return when it's all said and done, as a syndication would be, as more of somebody investing in their natural market, somebody that they know. That's my only criticism. Is just that the rates are usually a little bit lower, but I see the value in that.
And it's just a long-term play I see, and a morphing of the market as things get bigger and better, bigger I should say, in the scenario. So let me recap here for a second. So this is a two individual home investment that you have rolling. You're gonna have many more. I anticipate some of my buddies for sure, and some listeners asking, how do I get in? When they hear numbers like the numbers you said about what this place costs and what this place returned, we can do the math quickly in our head and find out how can we do that. So it would be contact Nick.lind at Revere Real Estate and find out how to get in this play. The other thing is I'm going to have some folks I'm sure that are going to ask a question of I need to market myself or my company a bit better, and I liked what Mr. Smells Good. What's your deal there, Nick?
It's my Instagram. It smells fantastic.
Smells fantastic.
And what's funny is that it's a bit ironic because if you actually are here with us right now, he reeks of like 3-day-old Doritos that's been sitting out in the sun.
Or patchouli oil.
Not quite. Neither is the above.
So I will give Nick one plug. So on your voicemail, if you call and you don't get a hold of Nick, you are the sum of your 5 closest friends. Is that what it is?
You're the average of the 5 people you associate with most.
And then he hangs up, and you have to just leave a message pondering that thought if you've never heard it before. And then you leave the call and you think to yourself, who are my 5 closest associates and friends, and am I like all of those guys? It's a thought-provoking thought there.
And one additional thing that Nick taught, and he says it all the time, and I don't know if it's originally from Gary Vaynerchuk or not, but he says, he comes up to me the other day and he's like, you know what? And this to all you listeners out there that are just wanting that extra gear, that motivation, He walks up to me and he says, hey, Nick, good morning. I go, good morning. He goes, today, I want to tell you this. I go, why? He goes, I want to be a 10-year overnight success. So people just don't realize that there's the secret sauce, and I'll share this with you. The secret sauce is work ethic, commitment, and honestly, just living your day out from a professional, vocational standpoint with integrity. Being a man that says what they do and does what they say.
And so you're saying some words here which are all music to our ears here, but not what you normally think of when you think of contracting, and not normally what you think of when you think of real estate, right? So you're counterintuitive to the stereotype.
Yeah, well, I am, and as an investor, and I'll get into how you can get in touch with us, but as an investor, obviously you don't have to be. I'm talking about anybody who wants to go out and learn how to do this themselves or wants to partner in with me. I have 2 actual people in LA. The Santa Monica deal and the Redondo deal that I put offers in are actually newer developers wanting to team up with me. So if you want to reach out to me on that, or if you're interested in the media side and want to get more information on how to market yourself, market your business, become somebody who has a major online footprint. I know that when you're looking from advertising dollars, that is the cheapest, most cost-effective way to really get your name out there, or the product that you offer, or the service that's better than the rest. Let them know, way to build your network. But if you're interested in investing, if you're interested in going in on a deal, if you're wanting to learn more, or hey, if you just have a couple of questions for us, you can go to our website. It's Revere Real Estate Co. That's REVERE realestateco.com to get some more information on us. And you can also email me at Nick.lind, last name LIND, at Revere realestateco.com.
Nick, tell us about your media company. So you're at Smells Good.
At Smells Fantastic on Instagram. You can find me there. Say hello. We can talk about some specifics. And kind of a final takeaway. One thing that I'd like to bring up, which is a really interesting discussion, is we're at the top of a 9.5-year short-term debt cycle. We're at the top of a long-term 100-year debt cycle. And so us being young guys, we're also very mindful of what that looks like for the investor and positioning them correctly if there is a significant dip in the market. And so that's a discussion that's at the top of our mind. Being young in this space, we're spending a lot of time looking at that, not being too naive about what that looks like. And so there's a lot of discussion and thought that we put into that. Hence the reason for the media side is to build some awareness, and so that we can come in on the back end and potentially purchase some deals that have gone BK, or houses that haven't been able to been finished by other developers who are a little bit over leveraged. We'll have a very specific game plan for that too. So that's a really cool conversation to have, and we'd love to maybe have a little fireside chat with some other people about that too.
Awesome. So I appreciate your guys' time. I love the fact that we're here on site and actually in the middle of it. There's sawdust all over the floor here. Obviously, you're hearing the compressors and the nail guns going in the background. We're sitting in a pile of wood right now, and actually you're sitting on a bucket and a piece of wood right now, Nick. And so this is a legit on-the-scene scenario here. As a Huntington Beach resident, I welcome having these new properties. These are going to help everybody's value and property value here. As a fledgling real estate investor myself, I'm curious. I think one of the questions I'm going to have for you offline here is, how do I get in? And I know a few of my buddies are going to want to know the same thing, because I don't think the market's on top. I think there's a lot of hype about the market being on top. This is Southern California. There's the sunshine tax in full effect. Yeah. I'm privy to people that travel from outside that are willing to move here. I hear lots of folks that say they're moving out, but I also hear lots of the rich moving in. I moved down to, or I hang out a lot down in Newport and the harbor area where the very affluent live, and there's nothing but nail guns and saws going off all day long down there. And so I don't think we're at the top of a market. I think that there's a lot more to it. So I'm interested to see this run. I have some friends and followers on this podcast that are going to be watching this business go for you guys, and I wish you guys all the best.
Hey, thanks a lot. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Good luck, guys. Hey, Mike here. Hope you liked this boardroom session. Please check back to our future sessions, as we're recording a new one every month. If you want to reach out, look for me on LinkedIn or send me a note at mike@sidepath.com. That's Mike at sidepath.com.